Welcome to Past, Present, Future Cast, the podcast that's also a tarot card reading. I'm your host, Maria Elena Pakulis, and this is our first episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am sitting here and visualizing everyone who's going to listen to this episode this week and in many, many coming weeks, and I am sending you so much love and gratitude and care. Thank you for joining me here. It really means a lot to me. So with this being the first episode that comes out, know that I'm going to be workshopping this format. Things episode to episode may look a little bit different. This is really my Saturn return project. And with my Saturn being in Pisces, Pisces is very ephemeral. It's very changing and shifting, and it's tough to nail down exactly. So while I'm working on the structure, Saturn governs structures of this podcast, there's likely to be some changes and some shifts and some general Piscean, what's a good word? Some general Piscean, wooey, mushy, bottom of the sea vibes. All right. So our first segment that we're going to have, I think every episode, is I'm going to pull a card of the week for us. Now, before I get into this week's tarot card of the week, I would like to give us our first lesson in developing intuition and receiving spiritual guidance, because I want this podcast, this show, to be something that you can learn from and something that you can gain a lot from if you are someone who is working on developing your intuition, if you are working on developing a tarot practice, if you have a tarot practice and you just want to continue to expand it. That's where I was a handful of years ago when I found some tarot podcasts, and I gained a lot from them. So I'm wanting to give you some little tidbits, tips, and tricks that you can take with you. I'm infusing this podcast with hopefully some informational, educational content about how to be the best tarot reader that you can be. So I want to talk about this phrase that I'm going to offer you that I think we hear thrown around in spiritual circles a lot. And it's going to be very important in regards to how you consume the tarot card of the week. Are you ready? Take what you need and leave the rest. You've probably heard this before. I know I've heard it a million times, and it's always true. Take what you need and leave the rest. So anything that I share here in regard to this is our forecast for the week, maybe I'm talking about what's going on astrologically. I love astrology and I love talking about what the planets are doing. Any kind of guidance that I give in this collective tarot reading, because the card of the week really is a collective tarot reading for everyone who's listening. Anything that I share, you are invited to take only that which you need, only that which is serving you. Take only that as truth, as what you are gaining, and just leave the rest. Maybe it's not for you. A collective reading is often not for you. More often than not, anyone in the world offering a quote unquote collective reading, it's probably not for you, but sometimes it is. If you are someone who's listening to this podcast, I put the specific intention when I'm pulling this card so that it's for people listening to this podcast, to this episode in real time. So that narrows down, if that describes you, maybe this is more for you. But I want you to think about this in terms of have you ever been listening to a song or a lecture or a movie, and you hear a certain line, you hear someone say something, and it really strikes you in a way that nothing else that has been or is being said has struck you like that. And you go the phrase that comes to mind is oh man, I really needed to hear that right now. That is the feeling that indicates that you needed that is what you were meant to take from that, whatever it is that you're listening to, where you hear that, from that song, from that moment of your life. That's what you need to take. Okay, take that and leave the rest. So with that being said, Here is our tarot card of the week for February 9th to 15th. Take what you need and leave the rest. Our card this week is the Six of Cups. So sixes, in my practice, how I work with tarot, sixes are expansion and cups are connectivity. So the expansion of connection to each other and our connection to ourselves, that's what this card is talking about this week. Cups also relate to our emotions. There's a lot stirring our emotions right now. There's a lot of attempts to manipulate our emotions right now. How can we connect back to the core values that we developed when we were children growing up in the world? This card often relates to children. And with it being a cup or a card in the suit of cups, which is connected to water. Water, I think Venus is about our values. So there's some connection here to our values, and especially those values that were instilled in us really young, really early in our lives. Did you maybe learn the importance of kindness or sharing, being helpful in the world, being a helper? What did Mr. Rogers teach you when you were a child, if you were of the age to be watching Mr. Rogers as a child? We could use a lot more of those values right now. So what can you do this week to radiate those values out to the world, to expand those values, to spread that out? Oftentimes I think of this card as I picture a little stone dropping into a still pool and the way the water ripples out. And that's like that expansion of connectivity, that expansion of love, that expansion of healing. All of those words are connected to the Suit of Cups. This card, in the traditional Pamela Coleman Smith drawing of this card, it features children. There are two children. One looks a little older than the other, and the older one is handing the other one a cup. And all of the cups in this scene, the one that's being passed and then the ones that we see just around in the image, have flowers growing out of them. It's so beautiful. So because the image of this card features children and the cups are also connected to healing, the Six of Cups is often associated with inner child healing. I firmly believe that so much of the violence and the oppression that we are seeing and have seen for a long time play out in the US and in world politics, that is rooted in some really deep, often intergenerational, unhealed wounds. Right now, the people who have way too much power in this world also have so much inner child healing, and they are taking it out on everyone else. And that does not absolve them of their crimes and of their poor behavior, their atrocious behavior. Knowing and understanding that someone is hurt and wounded and is acting from a place of hurt does not absolve them from the bad behavior. I want to make that really clear. I saw a TikTok video a little while ago and I reposted it. So it's somewhere on my reposts on my TikTok at Persephonic777. But it was by this creator at Tony Nagy, I think, TONI.NAGY. And they made this video where she highlighted the fact that that asshole who is currently our president and two specific people amongst his group of famous, mega wealthy cronies and friends. This TikTok video highlighted the fact that all three of them have really like wild daddy trauma just based on their like biographies and their life histories. And it's so apparent that they're basically taking their own pain out on us, the population in the US, me, I live in the United States, because they've positioned themselves as our proverbial daddies. They're our daddies now, and their daddy was mean to them, so they're going to be mean to us. And it's just so fucking frustrating seeing these patterns and identifying these patterns. I don't want to go on that tangent, but I loved this video. I thought it was very informative and comedic, but also made a really great point. And how that connects to the Six of Cups is really this idea that it is a radical act to tenderly care for our inner children and our inner teens and our inner infants and our inner adolescents. It's a radical act to care for our emotional well-being. And the Six of Cups is reminding us that these acts ripple out and impact far more than just ourselves, like that stone dropping into the still water. These acts ripple out. And gosh, the waters aren't really still right now, are they? If the stone is, us giving ourselves a little bit of love and we're dropping that into the waters, the energy, the collective energy of the world right now, these waters are really choppy, but that stone is still making those ripples. And if there's enough ripples, maybe we can calm some things down. So again, it is a radical act to care for our emotional well-beings. Tending to ourselves ensures that we can more easily come back to balance and come back to regulation, a regulated nervous system, especially after we do things that are scary, because it is the time now to have to do things that are scary. Whether that's attending a protest or calling your representatives. Dude, phone calls are so hard. I know that sounds like the easiest task, but hey, I have phone anxiety, so I get it. I get it if it terrifies you to have to call your representatives and maybe talk to someone or leave a message, but we have to do the scary things right now. And caring for ourselves helps us come back into balance after we do those scary things. And maybe that scary thing is shutting down some Nazi bullshit when it rears its ugly head in your community, because it's rearing its ugly head everywhere right now. Really scary things are happening, and we can continue to grow our toolkit to combat them. Your personal healing work is a foundational tool. Sharpen that tool this week. All right, that's our card of the week. Any housekeeping? I'm gonna beg and plead every week for you to subscribe to the show wherever it is you find us. Maybe subscribe in multiple places. If you sometimes are on YouTube, check us out on YouTube. I may start uploading some videos up over there. Everything is the same, past, present, future cast. Subscribe on wherever you listen to podcasts. And I think that's all the housekeeping I'm gonna have for this week. Now, I'm so excited for the interview that is coming up. This interview is with a good friend, Chris Carlone. He is actually the person who did the photography for the cover photo, the icon, the logo, the branding of this show and of all the images on my website. And he is just a fascinating creative with a lot of different projects. And I'm so excited that we got this chance to chat. So I will leave us to that interview now. Here is my interview with Chris Carlone. Okay, I am here with Chris Carlone. Thank you so much for being here with me today, Chris.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here, and thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. I'm just so glad you're here. I'm glad we're getting to have this conversation.
Yeah.
This serves as your photography credits for the podcast and my website. Chris was the one who took the beautiful photo that I'm using as the podcast thumbnail art, and all the photos that are currently of me on my website right now.
Yay, I'm so glad. That was such a fun time, and it was so sort of like, I have to use the word magical. It was like, let's go over here and see what happens. And it was like, yes, oh my God, this is looking great. Wait, let's go over to that weird little, cactus or rock and try something there. And then the light shifted, and it was like, we just kept, to me, that's when things are happening, when it's, you're in the moment and you keep getting great results. You're like, okay, we're onto something here. So
yeah, magical is definitely a word that I would use for that as well. It was also a full moon. It was Friday the 13th. It was
oh
just
my
a very magical
God,
day in general.
I forgot it was Friday the 13th, which to me is always like the good luck day for
Yes,
me.
same.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, people are like, oh no, it's Friday the 13th. I'm like, that's when you want to do whatever on that day.
Yeah.
That's the day. Yeah.
So I sent out, in preparation for this meeting, this interview, I sent out the briefest of questionnaires. There's like 2, 3 questions on it. And I asked you, Chris, how would you describe or define yourself? And I kept that question. It's the same that everyone who I've scheduled with so far has filled out the same questions. And I kept that question specifically really vague with the hopes that I would get exactly the answer that you gave me. So
And it's funny because I don't exactly remember what I wrote, but I just remember it kind of came out of me, and I was like, that looks good. I'm
that
not going to
works.
think about it too much. Yeah. So I can't wait to hear what it is because I kind of remember.
So Chris is a chaotic good 26th level wood elf bard with +10 magic, but a very low armor class. He is an expert in shape shifting and the dance floor.
That's pretty
I
accurate.
think it's pretty spot on. I think if I were to
Yeah.
describe you, that's also what I would say.
Oh, wow. Yeah, yeah, for sure. We've all got our strengths and our weaknesses, and I'm working on my armor class for sure.
So expert in shapeshifting and the dance floor. I feel like that leads really naturally into our first question today, which is what does your work look like in the world? Where is your attention, your energy going? How are you shapeshifting and where is the dance floor?
Gosh, it this has always been my challenge in life is like, what is my attention on? What am I focusing on? What am I, where am I putting all the energy? And I'm still working on that. I'm still working on honing it in and saying no to some things and, trying to, trying to, to, trying to just sort of focus more on one thing that feels right. So, but naturally, I'm a person that has always been all over the map. Um, I play in 2 bands. I am a photographer. I'm a filmmaker. I'm a dancer. I've been dancing with this company called Funhouse Movement Theater, which has been incredible. We're doing our second show at the Japanese Garden coming up. Um, and aside from all of that, I have this thing called the Sacred Fool Workshop. And that, I believe, is where my attention is right now because it feels sort of like this culmination of everything that I've ever done. And it feels important. It feels like this is what I should be focusing on because the world needs it more than ever.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, so I think, really that is, and it also like just makes me feel great. Like, it's so, I'm so honored to guide people through this journey of this class and to just explain a little bit about what it is. Uh, it's sort of a really wild, fun movement class where I give lots of different prompts about different things that you'll basically use your imagination to guide your body in the movement. And there's all kinds of crazy stuff happens. A lot of stuff with blindfolds, like where you're blindfolded. I always tell people it's not what you look like when you move, it's what you feel like. And so I feel like when we do exercises with blindfolds, it allows us to just actually authentically move our bodies when I'm giving these prompts without what caring about what you look like. If you look cool, like nobody can see you. And there are parts where we're not blindfolded too. But right off the bat, we just inject a lot of absurdity into it. So we're immediately, everybody's like in the same boat of like, right off the bat, I knight everyone with this fake sword, and then we all get on horses to this really loud bagpipe music, and we just start trotting, and we're like, okay, we're like in 5 minutes, we're trotting around the classroom, and we're chanting things really loud to like our past and our future
Oh
selves,
my
like that are
gosh.
positive affirmations that are like, screaming fuck yeah, like just fun stuff, but also really deep stuff. Like I feel like the work is sort of like, you know, like it, the work through it, I feel like we release a lot of stuff that we hold on to in our bodies. And yeah, and so it is really where I feel the most passionate right now. So
Hmm.
that That's a very long answer to your
That's a
question.
great answer. And
Okay.
I hear you. I really hear you when you talk about having all of these irons in the fire, all of these things that all feel like they're fueling your creativity and all feel like really true authentic parts of yourself. And then sometimes there's the one thing that really pulls focus for a second, but it doesn't take away from, sometimes it does, but it doesn't emotionally take away from like the fact that you are in these bands and you are a photographer and you are a filmmaker, even if you're maybe not literally making a film right now, like you're still a filmmaker.
Oh, I am.
Yeah. So
I
that's,
am literally making a film
yeah,
right
and then
now.
you are too.
Right, right.
That's
No, but yeah, that's exactly it. And I always kind of wished like, oh, I wish I was one of those people that just did one thing,
mhm.
like I just, and so, but I'm not. So, and I think that in after over time, I think it's it's great to find a way to sort of to bring everything to bring it all together and use a little bit of everything you've learned in all these other areas to strengthen whatever it is you're doing. So,
Yes, I want to highlight that because my next question was going to be, how do you feel like the individual parts inform each other and inform the whole that is you?
yes, I mean I it's so great to to have so much experience in so many different things. Like when I'm doing something like you know well, like photography, like there's always this weird awkwardness right at the beginning every time. It doesn't matter who you are, even if you're like my best friend and I'm about to take pictures of you.
Do you think that's you having the skill of getting over the awkwardness at the beginning of a photo shoot? I could see that being a useful skill to then bring into the classroom at a Sacred Fool workshop.
Oh my gosh, exactly. It's like because there's always people that are like terrified. Like there's always one or two people that are going out on a limb and they're like, I feel like for some reason, I don't know why I'm here. I needed to do this. And so yeah, so it's I think by immediately making myself into a fool, like right off the bat, like it kind of like makes it a little bit easier for everybody else then to do something foolish. And so yes, absolutely. And I think passion with anything, like if you're just so excited about what you're doing, if you're in your passion, then like you can quickly get over, you know, sort of any like your self-doubt, like just focus in on like, oh my god, this is so exciting that we get to do this, or because I love it, like this is what I love. And for you exactly, like I'm sure I can't even imagine what it's like. Well, yeah, I can somewhat, like to sit down with somebody and they come to you with like a serious question and you're like, oh my god, can I do this? Like you must have a second of doing that,
Yeah.
but then like 1 second later you're probably like, oh my god, I was born to do this. I love this and I can't wait to like help this person, and so it's very similar. Like I feel that way when I start my workshop. I'm like, how can like I if I can possibly make it so that every person leaves here feeling a little bit like more human again and more like inspired and like, oh shit, like that was I could do. Yeah, what else can I do? I don't know. So yeah, that's sort of my goal with that.
Yeah, like leading people through that experience is, I love that you're doing that and I love that that is something that people can do right now because I agree that it's so needed to be able to get back into our bodies and to move in ways that are uncomfortable and are different because I think for me a lot of what I'm thinking about right now is how we're really having to, or many of us are attempting to create a world that has not necessarily existed before. And so have being able to sit with the discomfort of the unusual or the unfamiliar or the strange, that is like a really good muscle to be flexing right now. So I love the concept of the Sacred Fool workshop. And you have some uh at least loose experience with tarot. When you named this the Sacred Fool, were you thinking at all about specifically the Fool in the tarot, or the Fool as a more general archetype that we can, of course, connect to this card in the tarot?
I was both. Like I was, I like if you laid out all of the tarot cards for me, like that's the one like that I go to, and so like all cards, they have their negative and positive aspects to them. But I think, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Do you, yeah,
That's what
yeah,
I
of
would say.
course. Okay, of course. I mean, everything does. Everything has its negative and positive aspects. So, but yes, I mean, I've always been really drawn to the Fool card, and really, it perfectly describes for me. I mean, I feel so connected to it. Often people like have said like many times people have said you're sort of like the fool, like in a good way. Don't take this bad, but like
Many people have called you a
and I'm
fool.
like, yeah, like like thanks. But no, I mean, and and they kind of wish that they were more like the fool, like,
Hmm.
and so it hasn't always worked for me, but I have through that connection with that archetype or that card or the fool, I feel like I've lived a really rich life, and I have this sort of wisdom through that can only be gained by walking off the cliff because it looks beautiful and you don't know if you're actually going to fly once you jump off or land, or if you're going to like break your legs. And I've done both, so I've got great stories to tell, and so there couldn't be a more perfect name for the class. And that was for a second really hard, like what am I going to call this? And um it was sort of like a lightning bolt, like a channel, like a download. It was like, oh yeah, this is some fool work right here. And yeah, it's a lot more too, but that's sort of the jumping off point is that, and feeling comfortable with the fool. And yeah,
That's
and it's
awesome.
good in its good aspects.
Yes. I'm remembering when we did our photo shoot and we were talking about how your life path card is the world, right? And
That's the other one.
some folks consider the fool and the world to be one and the same. Like the world is the developed fool. So I love
That
that.
is my, yeah, that's wild. I didn't know that, and I feel that for some reason, and I can't really exactly tell you why. There's sort of like dance in the world card when you look at the woman dance. I feel like she's dancing.
Yes, she's often called the world dancer.
I did not know that. And so I felt like she's dancing, and I feel like it is a perfect, almost like a polar opposite, like in astrology or something.
Hmm.
Like, you have your, I'm an Aquarius, and like Leo's, like we have this
Yeah,
fire between us, but we also like are attracted to each other, and sort of get at each other in this like outward way of like of being.
the
But
duality.
anyways, yes, and I feel like the world, which is the other card I feel really drawn to. That's so
Yeah,
interesting.
they're
Thanks
those
for telling me.
opposite ends of the
It's
spectrum,
crazy.
but
Yeah,
also it's like they're opposite ends of maybe the line. Say if we think about the major arcana laid out 0 through 21, that would be a straight line, but it's also a circle. Like if you bend it around, it's also supposed to be a circle. And so the
right.
world and the fool are where they meet. And yeah, so some folks do consider the world to be kind of like the fully
Oh,
formed or fully
yeah,
evolved version of the
right,
fool. So
right,
the
right.
fool takes that leap and then
Ooh,
eventually, yeah, they sometimes
maybe I
they
should.
fly and you end up in the world at the end. Those are definitely your cards. That's awesome.
You're inspiring me right now. Now I'm like, wait, now I should do another workshop called the Sacred World Workshop
Like
or something.
meeting the world the fool at
Right.
the edge of
Or
the world.
yes, or gosh, something. You're inspiring me. That's all I know. So thank you.
Amazing. Well, I want to talk a little bit about the cards that have come up. I did take a look at them while you were talking to kind of let it all marinate. And the two that we have for kind of you in the present right now are the King of Swords and the
Wow.
8 of Cups. The first thing that really struck me is when you talked
Hmm.
about when people come to the Sacred Fool workshop and it starts off with you like knighting them with, traditionally that's done with a big old sword. So this king of,
That is crazy.
yeah, like, oh, that's you. You're the king of swords. So what can I now learn
What?
from you to help inform me about this card? And I'm seeing this like the shape shifting that you talked about. The element of air, I
Mm.
feel like, is so closely associated with shape shifting and that like ephemeral mutability, like no container can hold you, or you only form to the container. It's like you form to the container that you craft for
Yep.
yourself.
I
Oh,
like that.
so I'm seeing that in the King of Swords, and like really you being in a position now to have, for lack of a better term, like mastered that. Because I'm sure this hasn't, I'm very sure that being this type of creative person hasn't been easy throughout your entire life. I heard you say that sometimes you just wish that you could follow one path or one thing, and I relate really heavily to that. I've cried over the fact that
Yes.
why
Oh
can't
my
I just
gosh.
do one thing?
Seriously. Right. No, and I think that you are your path is perfect. It's taken me so long to sort of get to this place of like being glad that I have done so many different things and I'm still sort of have, a little hand in each one of them still. I'm still
Yeah.
doing all of them, but I'm finding I'm just getting we get better at what we do, right? And it's like so it's a continuous process, but yeah,
What advice would you give to someone who is maybe early on in their kind of meandering creative career?
perfect. Keep doing it.
Just
Keep
keep going.
meandering. Keep gosh, I feel like there's nothing more that you should be doing, especially like for a young artist or a young person in the world who has so many different interests, is the most important thing is to stay in your passion, to stay in the thing that drives you, that makes you feel alive. Because when you're in that, that's when everything continues to open up for you. When you're not in that, everything else dries up and closes up. I have had points in my life where I've said to myself briefly, okay, you're too old to be wearing like a wig and spandex, coming home from a show on the subway at like 1 in the morning when, when you have to take your daughter to school tomorrow in like 5 hours. And, it, and that's okay to have those moments of self doubt. But looking back on it, every single time I said to myself, you're too old. Oh my gosh, I just turned 55 and I still feel pretty much around 30. I feel about 30 right now. And
Cool. So we're on the
it's,
same page because I will be
yeah,
30 in a few
yeah,
short
I
months.
figured you're like right around there. So it's like, no, really, I don't have many regrets, but I do regret these brief moments of my telling myself that I'm
Mm,
too old to do that, that it's time to hang that up and maybe you should. And that's just wasted time because, every experience you have, whether it doesn't work out or not, you gain so much from that. And I can look back on so many experiences that didn't work out. And what I learned from those were like so valuable for the rest of my life. And so yeah, it's just stay in your passion and we all have to find a way to make a living. We all have to pay the rent. There is that.
yeah.
But don't stop putting yourself out there because that's how the doors keep opening. And yeah, it just keep going. Just keep going. And because, you know, we could die tomorrow and you got to just do that thing you want to do. You have to just um, by all means, by any means necessary, is I say yes. There's the fool again. Do it.
Just do
Do it,
it.
do it, do it.
Just take
Just
the
do it.
leap.
Don't think about it. Do it. There's a great song called "Do It" by this band called the Pink Fairies, and it's so good because the guy's just screaming. He's like, "Don't think about it. Just do it," and it's so good. Let's look it up. Check it out. It's so good. It's like a '60s rock band.
The Pink Fairies, just do it.
Yeah, it's called "Do It."
Do it. Okay.
It
Hell
it's
yeah.
like my theme song, yeah, and just turn it really loud too.
I'm taking all of this advice seriously to heart.
Okay, yeah.
Do you feel as if I'm looking now at the 8 of Cups, and so the 8 of Cups for audio listeners features a figure walking away from the viewer. They're walking like out into the mountains or along a stream, and there's 8 cups stacked up in the foreground, and in the sky above this person is what I tend to see as an eclipse, the sun and moon overlapping, combining over themselves. Um, a lot of what I think about when I see this card is about walking away or evolving or transforming, especially on like a really deep, like internal level. Because eights are all about evolution and cups are kind of about like our internal landscape, our emotions, our spiritual connectedness. Do you feel like you have gotten better at knowing when it's time to walk away from a project?
That's a great question. I would like to think so. I just and it's something, again, I'm gonna say I'm still working at it, but I am proud of myself in, like, especially in like the last 5 years, like, of my evolution. And I feel like so many people I know, I feel like everything we've been through in the world in the last 5 years, I feel like it has been for our growth, and that's what it's supposed to be for. It's supposed to be, I feel like right now we should be like entering like the most evolved version of ourself. And that's what it feels like for me. It feels like there's so many times when I, and this could be just age and just finally maturing and whatnot, but where I will almost like say something, or I'll want to send an email back to somebody who sent me something, taking that like extra second to sort of like go, I'm not going to act from emotion all the time. I'm going
Mm,
to just sit with this for a moment
hmm.
and then come up with my best words possible. And then, so things like this, I feel like, you know, I feel an evolution in myself, that's it's great. You should celebrate that when you have those little moments where you're like, wait, I'm not going to do that this time.
Yeah, sit with it for a
That's a
second.
moment. Yeah, that's a moment to celebrate with yourself and go, good job, Chris. Good job,
Yeah.
Maria Elena. It's like, so creatively, it's interesting. This in the card, there's someone walking away, like you said, towards the sun, or
They're kind of walking like out into towards like some mountains along a river.
so that also for me feels very. If this, I feel like this is really powerful, like what you're explaining to me. I also feel this incredible call to nature and
Mm,
getting to go photograph you in nature and seeing where you live out in nature. It's so beautiful. And it's like, I feel after living in New York City and San Francisco and Los Angeles for the last 30 something years, like I've lived in big cities nonstop, I feel like for me creatively, and spiritually, it is so vital to be connected to nature,
yes.
to and so that's what that is for me. I feel like that's sort of walking away from more and more from all of this and just going going into nature and doing my work there because it inspires me and it makes me feel more
Mm.
grounded and healthy and whole.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like I'm learning a bit about this card from what you're saying of acknowledging that aspect of it that is just kind of almost like the hermit in a sense of like removing yourself from like the din is what I want to
Great.
say, but like that just ever present like the the energetic experience of being around so many people and like being in the thick of it all the time. There is very much a sense I'm seeing now in this card of pulling away, getting into the quiet, getting into the space. Okay, that's still all good and great. Like, thank God New York
Totally.
City is the
Yep.
crazy place it is. Keep it that way. But
And with
sometimes it's
Tucson,
time to step back.
Yeah, it feels real, especially in the world right now. And it feels so grounding to be like connected with nature and be like, there's my hummingbird friend that
Yeah.
that we see every day. And we know exactly where the hummingbird like lives and is guarding the feeder. And like, you know, I, I feel like it only helps me as an artist to be more grounded and to be connected with nature. And it's great. Tucson is a great place because you can live in deep nature and then in 30 minutes be in the middle of downtown, which is like Tucson is going off these days. It's
Oh my
like on
gosh,
one
yeah.
night, there'll be like 7 shows I want to see. And I can't, I'm like, I have to pick, what I'm going to do. Like there's so many fun things happening,
There's
So
so many
yeah,
fun things happening.
yeah. So
I
you
love
get it
Tucson.
all here. Me too.
In I think an episode that's going to come out in 2 weeks, I interviewed Ian Von Cleve. I interviewed him a week after he had led me through a past life regression hypnosis session. And at the end of that session, we were talking to my like subconscious self and asking, is there any advice that I need to hear right now? And the message that really came through and that's really stuck with me since then was just um, go out into the desert alone more. That's where you draw your power from. And I think that's something that a lot of creatives, especially creatives like in Tucson, we are desert people. We have to get out of the city and into nature to really like fill up that cup.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. It's so powerful. Like people talk, I mean, I love Sedona. I love, all of Arizona, but Tucson is a powerhouse of energy. And like there's so much, there are so many powerful, incredible places. I feel so lucky to live right by Catalina State
Oh,
Park. I mean,
yes.
just going in there, it's like, oh my gosh, every time. So,
We're generating a lot here. There's one more question I want to
yes.
ask about kind of your current work before we dive into some past projects and things that you've been influenced by or done in the past. And I'm wondering if you have noticed or if you have received any of feedback from folks who have done your Sacred Fool workshop. I'm thinking of the word like catalyst and how the last 5 years have been, we're talking about the last 5 years has been like a catalyst for us, like diving into or embodying like our potential. Um, are folks I could imagine where folks going through the Sacred Fool workshop kind of feel like there's some transformation or something's been like ignited in them. Do you have any evidence of that, or am I just telling you that this is probably what's happening?
Yeah, I really hope so.
Hmm.
I do have a few people that have been coming back regularly,
Love.
and they almost feel like they've said stuff like, "I don't even quite understand, like, what's going on, but I need to come back," and they
Hmm.
do, and they come back, and, you know, I feel like it's such a big responsibility, um, to guide people through something like this because like I said earlier, it's like we hold a lot of trauma in our bodies. We store a lot of emotions and just so much like and deep down in there is the child in all of us. So it would be my hope and I feel like to be able to release some of that and also to remember what it's like to be a child and the wonder of that and also to remember like this thing that we're in our bodies is absolutely miraculous
Yes.
and like just the smallest things like the 8 million ways that your hand can move like it's and if you just sit there and trip out on it it's like I that's what the class is about. So um I it's sort of a feeling in the middle of the class when I'm watching people going through these exercises that I'm bringing up, and I know that there's something that I'm stirring, and I just wanted, yeah, I just hope to move something and to inspire, and I there have been people who have written testimonials about you know what a wild experience. I think that's the word I hear a lot, is that it's a wild experience, and that, um, you know, yeah, that they leave inspired. And so, I need to find a place to put those testimonials.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
It's
I need
easy.
to maybe make a website
Yeah, it's
for
pretty
the
easy
thing.
to make a website these days, as
Yeah.
I've been
Yes.
working on mine.
Yeah, yeah. Right. That's my, like, Aquarius sort of like, forget the real basic stuff sometimes, like
Yes.
to do. Oh yeah, make a website for. I mean, yeah, it'll just take me a minute, and then I'll get on it,
There you go.
because I'll be thinking about 800 other things.
So in summation, I as we've talked, I've really seen these two cards just coming together to kind of describe you in your mature power, having evolved and grown throughout your life as a shapeshifter, and now being in this place where you are guiding and leading folks through some emotional transformations in this work that you're doing. That's for those who are listening to the audio and not watching the video. I'm really holding up and tapping on these cards because seeing you in your power as the King of Swords, knighting these folks coming in, and then encouraging this like fluid
It's pretty
movement
fluid.
of the emotions and the energies that are in our body, both all of that's connected to cups and water especially, but also air. And so getting that all moving and churning and having that lead to, I'm sure, I'm quite convinced, having that lead to some pretty profound emotional transformations in the folks who you're guiding.
That is my hope. That is my hope.
So, where have you been before this? What came before the Sacred Fool workshop? I just from, following and seeing the work that you do now and what you talk about, I can see there's a vast history of you as a brilliant creative fool on your little journey to the world.
Gosh, well, I think it started when I was like 17, and dropped out of high school, and because I was going to be a rock star.
Hell yeah.
And that
Hell
was
yeah, brother.
that that's I was like, I don't need to stay here anymore and waste my time here, because I am going to be a rock star. And that was it.
Would you
And so
advise any 17-year-olds do that now?
um as a parent, I'm going to say I'm going to say I'm going to say to at least just go get your GED.
Okay. Yes.
Okay? And
I can
then
stand by that.
and then just go full on, but then, you know, be open to to coming back and getting back into the classroom about what you're passionate about.
Mhm.
There's no That's where you should be. So, and I love being a student. I love learning. And so, it just took me like a few years, and then I was taking classes, well, no, more like 10 years. But anyways, I started going back to school, and I went back to school eventually for video editing. But music has been a constant for me and I've been playing in bands nonstop since I was 17. Toured, I've played in all over the country on tour. I've played in Europe, in 8 million bands you've never heard of. And I will do it forever. I'll be like, that old guy, like, playing probably in a cover band somewhere. And that's what I think I am right now,
There
actually.
you go.
See, I forget. I'm like, wait, you're not
You're there
Kennedy
now.
anymore. I'm actually there. I'm actually doing it.
I am the old guy playing in the cover
I am.
band. When did that
Hold on a
happen?
second. Wait. Oh shit. That's what it's like getting older. Let me tell you, it is the weirdest thing. Like, you'll have a moment. I remember being 39 and being like, fuck, I am 39. Like, what kind of age is that? It's so lame. Like, you're not even like 40 yet, but like you're 39. What the hell? And then 40, I was like, cool, I'm 40. And then I was like, fuck, this is, it just gets weirder and weirder. And then finally you get comfortable with it. And you're like 55 is just nothing but totally surreal. But anyways, to get back to my story, just nonstop music the whole time. Around 30 years old, I moved to New York City when I was 29. And I was like, I am like, I could feel theater thing. I moved to New York City. I'd never been there before.
Oh my
I'm like,
gosh.
my girlfriend at the time, who would become my wife and the mother of my daughter, she was wanted to become a fashion designer, had just graduated, and was like, "What do you think about moving to New York City?" And I said, "Hell yeah, let's go. I've never been there, but like all my favorite movies are in New York City, and I know that's where I should be." So we moved to New York, and I just felt this sort of theater thing. And I was like, I've always wanted to do theater. Just done music. And so I'm going to start taking acting classes. So I got super into acting and was totally in the New York, like, off Broadway underground theater scene. And then moved back to San Francisco, did a lot more acting there. And then my daughter was born, and then started getting into video editing and photography, and realized, well, I have to find ways to make a living and to doing something creative. And I this is something I'm good at, like telling stories. Having acted, I could, you know, I was good at sort of piecing the story together with great scenes, and it just came naturally to me. And as a musician, I have great timing, and I'm a drummer, so it's like I feel like my sense of timing is really good. And I know so many people in bands, and they all need music videos. So
Yeah.
I just started making tons of music videos for people. So I've made like over 100 music videos at this point. And so now we've got music, and then I went back to school for video editing at
Mm.
Academy of Art in San Francisco. So I've got video editing now, I've got photography and acting. So eventually I find myself back in New York City, and then I moved back to San Francisco again, and I started this crazy thing called Bortz My Norts. And Bortz My Norts was a culmination of everything I'd done at that point. It was like a performance art music project that was very experimental. I made all of the musical instruments, like a stand-up bass I made out of a snow
Oh
ski.
my.
Um, and I had these dancers because I was in this play with dancing in it, and there were dancers. And I said, "Oh my God, I want to create something that is totally absurd and feels like rock and roll, but it looks like modern dance, and it's got a lot of absurdity. And but we're gonna play with like heavy metal bands and stuff." So I created this character called Bortz My Norts, and we choreographed like 15 songs, myself and these two dancers. And I'd never taken a dance class in my life. And I was like, "Oh my God, I'm just like, let's dance." I'm like, I love dance. Like, so then I just started taking any kind of dance classes I could. And we choreographed the shit out of like 15 songs, the craziest thing. And there's this thing about art where it's like, if you don't know what you're doing, it's like a child painting. The child has no idea what they're doing. And sometimes you'll look at it and go, that is so cool and weird. And so I feel like that's kind of what my choreography was. It was like, I'm going to mix in anything I know. So like all these like Bob Fosse, like, jazz hands with
Yes.
like 80s, like music video, like really dramatic, like, just mix what I know. And with these two dancers who are trained, and
While
they sort of
you're
like,
also like in a wig and like
right, and
maybe some
spandex,
spandex.
playing a
Yeah.
ski,
Yeah.
yeah, and like a wireless headset mic. So Bortz My Norts has been this character, and that's the sort of shape-shifting thing that I've been doing for 20 years. And I feel like when I'm in the unitard, I channel, like I'm channeling something like Pan, or I'm channeling like Kiernanos, like the god of the woodland creatures and poetry and dance, and like, I'm channeling all of these like powerful deities that are like, if a lot of times I will do a performance and then I'll come off the stage and I'd be selling merch or something, and somebody would be like, "Where did that guy go? That, like, is he going to come out?" And like, I'm like, that was me. And they're like,
Oh
"Shut the fuck
my
up." Like, yeah.
gosh.
So it's,
Shape-shifting fully, truly.
yeah. So it's a part of me. It's become a part of me. So yeah, so I think that's all my long explanation of all of the history of you know, my creative world. It's like somewhere, oh gosh, but then there's one more thing I left out. In an extension of the dance thing, I discovered this type of dance from Japan called Buto dancing.
Okay.
And it really, really like moved me and moved something in me. And it was invented by these two guys in Japan in 1959, and they were dancers, and they were inspired by German expressionism, different types of forms of art, but they were very much also inspired by the horrors of the bombings in Japan. And so this type of dance is called the dance of darkness. And what it is it's sort of like very inspired by death and spirits and ghosts and rebirth and decomposition and nature. And it's really there's a practice of Buto dancing, and then there's the performance side of it. So the practice of it is a thing creatively or spiritually that kind of combined, because it's a combination. I finally found this sort of different type of movement art form that I think was life changing. So a lot of my Sacred Fool class, a lot of the exercises are based in Buto dancing. And
Mm.
so that's something in my classes I always tell people about and let them sort of explore it themselves. So that then from there, I've performed many times with different companies doing Buto dance in New York City, and created my own dances, and performed those as well. And yeah, and like I said, now I'm performing with this really awesome company called Funhouse Movement Theater.
That's amazing. A
So too
lot of
many
movement,
things, too many things.
but it all centers on movement, creative expression, and there was a third one I was gonna say, but what was it? Where
Like
did it go?
visual art or visual art or like
Music, visual arts.
music. Yeah,
Yeah, a lot of
yeah,
music. It's
too much.
passion, like what kind of excites you and what drives you. And it's like the Fool exploring where kind of the internal fire guides.
There is a lot of fire in there. And
Yes.
so, and I have to find a way to let some of it out. And
Mhm.
like even going to that first Buto class, I was like, I just remember going down a rabbit hole of looking up videos on YouTube. I'm like, this is somewhere between really beautiful and really grotesque and crazy. And like, and then I'm like, well, I'm in New York City. There's got to be Buto classes. And then I'm like, look it up on the internet. I'm like, there's one tonight. Like, and I'm going. And I was like, okay, I'm going to a Buto class. And so, yeah. And I was terrified. And then it was like, afterwards, I was like, oh shit. I knew I had just like unlocked something really deep for myself. And yeah. And so it was life changing. And
That
yeah.
feeling when you land on something that you know is now gonna inform
Oh,
so
yeah.
much of the future or like so much of who you are is such a cool feeling. I've had that a few times where you just know, oh, I was supposed to learn
Mhm.
about this. Now what are we gonna
Yeah,
do with it? Here we go.
totally. Totally. And just starting from like just being, knowing nothing, being like the student, being like, that's a great place. It's a great place to be like just open and be like, I am a sponge and I want to know about this, and let's go. Like it's so exciting to be in that place.
So you say the student, and we've talked a lot about the Fool, and those the students of tarot are represented as the pages, and we could think of the pages, pages being the one of the four court cards, the youngest we could think of the court cards. So there's the pages, the knights, the queens, the kings. So the pages are students, they're explorers, they're learners, and we can kind of think of all of the pages as being like sub facets of the Fool, with the Fool being like the major arcana version, and then the pages kind of playing out that same archetype, but in their own various expressions through the four suits. And so the two cards that came up for your past here are both pages. And we have the Page of Pentacles
Whoa,
and the Page of Wands.
crazy. Oh my God. I'm learning so much here, by the way. I want you to know you're teaching
Good.
me. And
This is
yeah,
this is part of it. This is part of the point.
yes. No, I'm so overwhelmed by tarot, and I'm also been there's been points where I've been really drawn to it and been like, maybe I should, learn more about this. And I have books and whatnot, but this is how I learn. Like what
Yeah.
you're telling me is like, thank you for applying it this way because I can learn this way. So
Thank you. Thank you for pointing
yeah,
that out.
yeah.
So, with these two, when I think of pentacles, we're talking about more like earthy things. So, things that are related to the element of earth. And as you've been talking, I've been thinking skills. There's been so much of this journey for you where it seems like you've been accumulating skills, just like, oh, let me see where my passion, which is fire, the page of wands, I'm going to follow my passions and just see where it leads me. I'm just going to keep stepping off these cliffs and see where it leads me, and in that accumulating all of these skills at the same time. And that has then like grown, and it's grown and evolved, but it really feels like you've consistently kept the energy of the page, which
Mm.
is just a beautiful way to always be a student. I think you've said a couple times now of just like seeing yourself as a student, loving to learn. And I think it's important for other creative folks and for us to recognize that you can stay forever in that student mindset and still reach king level of mastery and king level of experience, because you are with the king showing up, the king of swords, but getting there by never losing that curiosity that you have as a student.
You're just your words are ringing true. And yeah, it's so interesting to hear somebody explain to you like yourself. It's giving me goosebumps. um, yeah, I mean, it's nice. There is something nice about like this advanced age of mine. It's like it feels like okay, like I finally kind of get what I'm supposed to be doing here, and what all of this was for. I think that's a big part of it. It's like, and when you were talking about those moments where you're sort of like so frustrated or like, oh, like, am I, why can't I be like this or that? Like this King of Swords moment feels like it's the payoff,
Yeah,
like where you feel like when you put your shoes on, you're like, these are the right shoes. Like I'm in the right place,
this
like,
fits.
and this culmination, yeah, of everything is finally fitting. Yeah. So thank you so much for that reading. It's like, that's a really powerful reading and a great explanation, because a lot of times it's hard for us to see the picture ourselves,
Mm,
and we need great readers like you who can actually help us see it. So that is one of your strengths,
thank
and
you.
thank you for sharing that with me.
Thank you for mirroring that back to me. We need those mirrors, and this is what I really want other folks who are creatives, who do not have a linear path, who find themselves meandering and journeying and following that pull from your inner fire. I want us to see that eventually, it does work out
You
and we
can be a
can feel
full blown
comfortable
nut
in this. You can
like
be a
me
whole adult. You can turn 55 and still be doing
and
really
still
cool
just be
shit
wearing tights and shit,
and
with
sloth
a thick
t-shirts.
sword, just like, totally. Absolutely.
So, as we're winding this conversation down, I'd love to engage in a little what I'm calling imaginative prediction. So, looking forward to the future, manifestation could be a word, but I like this imaginative prediction of what's coming for us. It's a terrifying time in the world right now, and so much energy, I think, is being spent imagining scary future potentials. So let's take a couple minutes to imagine some really awesome scenarios that could play out for you and your work moving forward. What do you see coming down the line for you? What would you like to happen?
I love this question because I always, when creating art and if I'm collaborating with someone, I always encourage just don't put any like sort of like don't put any barriers in front of you. Like if you could imagine whatever, like how do you like the best, the greatest, most impossible like dream in your mind, what would that look like? And so that's kind of what this question is for me. And so I think sort of in relation to the was it how many cups? What was the cups card?
8. There was 8
Eight,
cups.
eight, the Eight of Cups card, and sort of walking away. I have this dream of living in this sustainable, off-grid, earth dome sort of situation, or rammed earth home, or something like that I build myself, but having a space where I can hold these workshops and do like 3-day workshops and like have people come out and like and camp or stay on the land and just live in it with me, like, and I think that's when you really make some real huge breakthroughs and progress is when you can live in your art. I've done that in many amazing workshops, and I feel like those have been the most transformative for me. And so to be able to have a space in nature that I can bring people out and do something like that would be the dream. That's kind of the dream I'm living for, I'm hoping for right now. And I think it's totally doable. And then to go a little bit further, my dream would be to travel the world doing this, like to
Wow.
go to, you name it, anywhere in the world, and share my gifts and this workshop and this work with other people. I think that's sort of that's the big dream. So,
That's
and then all
beautiful.
in between, I will continue to to do all the other millions of things that I like to do.
Yeah, exactly. In
Yeah,
the downtime, then you'll make
yeah,
another 45 films.
yes, exactly. Make more movies and
Yes.
albums than performances, but I think this is like the important work right
Yeah.
now because, like you said, in this scary time, it's like it's important that we dream big. It's important that we can't stop that. Like how that's what we're supposed to do. And dreams can be anything, like dreams of a better world or better, or of how we want the world to look, or our having a space where we can hold a workshop or whatever that is. All on all levels, we need to keep doing that. We need to never forget that right in front of us is absolute wonder. This body that we're in is in itself absolutely miraculous. If you just really pay attention to every single thing you're doing, you'll start tripping out and it's fun. Like when you're just walking down the street or just no one's around, just move your body in a weird way and just, you know, I, I'm always just amazed by that. if your eyeballs can move, you can do it. Like it doesn't even matter the state of your body. Like I, it like really, like you can dance with your eyeballs.
Mm.
It is it's pretty endless.
Yeah,
And
it's not
so
limited to
it's not.
the
I
the
mean, like
ability of your body, and if you
right,
can
exactly.
stand, if you can sit, if you
And
can.
God, and that is the fountain of youth. That is the key is to like keep moving your body. Keep moving your body. I mean, I know a lot of really young people, like, my daughter's age and whatnot, that need to move around more. Like, get up and move around. It's like all of us can forget. And I've done it. So um
I want to say that what you described initially with the space to bring people out and really have these like fully immersive multi-day long workshops is something that I am hearing, especially in a like naturally built place, is something I'm hearing that's in my heart right now, that's in some of the hearts and minds of my closest creative friends. And I'm amplifying that for you. I'm amplifying that for all of us. And my partner, who I live with, is currently doing a lot to learn different natural building practices: Adobe,
so
straw
cool.
bale,
Yes,
rammed earth.
yes, yes,
So I'm adding you to the list of people
please.
who I'm going to call on when we start making
Yes.
some buildings out
I
here.
will be there. I will be there to help. This is what we need to do is to find I mean, that's one of the things that we have in common is that sort of vision for, for how we'd like to see our futures and communities. And so please count me in to help. And that's what's so great about that whole world as well, is like people want to learn and they want to, again, to be a student and to gain this knowledge, because it's very important right now for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be a student of knowledge. We have one more page that's come up in your future cards here, and it is the student of knowledge, the page of swords. I love that we
So
jumped
many pages.
all
That's
the 3
crazy.
pages.
Oh, that's
Out of
insane.
6 cards, half of them are
Wow.
pages.
Wow,
So
that
we
is wild.
go from the King of Swords to the Page of Swords, further reinforcing you always staying in that beginner's mindset, continuing to learn and grow
Hell
and
yes.
follow where the free flowing, where the winds blow you. Where are the
Yes.
winds going to blow you next? And
Mhm.
then we also jumped from the Eight of Cups to the Four of Cups. So bringing a little more stability to and structure to some
Please,
of that
please.
emotional transformation. Yeah, right.
I
You're
need
like, I would
that.
love that. I'd love a little structure and
Yes. Oh
stability.
my, I no, really, seriously. That's always been a challenge for me. Like when you said, I can imagine, with the person you are and the life you chose, that it's been challenging for you sometimes. And that is one area, stability, like, anything from financial to where I'm living to, and so, yeah. So for me, we all have our challenges, and that's been mine. And so, and it's gotten better. It's gotten better. So that's really encouraging to see. So,
Amazing. Amazing.
yeah,
Well, I am thrilled. I'm just thrilled to have had this conversation with you. This is
me too. I feel,
exactly nailing what I want these interviews to be. And just thank you so much for doing this with me.
thank you so much. And like I said, you actually really inspired me, and you, it was just almost kind of moving to see this reading and to see sort of the big picture and hear your sort of interpretation of it. I've learned a lot about the tarot, and also just have been inspired by it. So thank you so much for the reading. And also, I have to be totally honest, I I feel like anytime I touch a tarot card, it's horrible. like like if I just like walk by the tarot deck, I'm like, I'm afraid to touch it because it'll
Not
be
the
like
devil again.
7 of Swords or like the devil, or like, no, seriously, like. So I have to admit, I was a little bit scared. I was like, oh God, what if it's just terrible? And that was like, yeah, it wasn't terrible at all.
It's not uncommon. It's not uncommon for folks. And
I'm not
so
sure. So maybe that got me over it. So thank you for that too.
you're welcome. And I'm sure
Yeah,
that it is my hope, but I'm also quite it's my hope that people listen to this. I can't be sure that people will listen to this, but it's my hope that they
sure.
will. And I know that those who do will absolutely be inspired by you and your work. So, Chris, where can folks find you if they want to continue to engage with your work?
Well,
Website
let's
coming
see.
soon.
Yeah. Well, I do have a website, but it's mostly for photography, which
Mhm.
is, go to my website and check out all my photographs if you want pictures. And I would love to work with anyone out there. It is chriscarlonecreations.com. And you can also see my video reel, which is some really like, it's a great little reel. So there's all kinds of very surreal, crazy little movies all put together. And then on Instagram, you can find me at Chris Carlone. That's where I post about the workshop. And then also, if you want to go a little further, there's, like I said, Borts Minorts, which is my alter ego, part of myself character. And that is on Instagram, BORTSMINORTS, Borts Minorts, just like it sounds. Um, and
There is a
let's,
Sacred Fool workshop coming up. At the time that this will be posted, it will be in
yes,
1 week. It's on, I think, February 16th.
that is correct. Sunday, February 16th, at a new location. I had been doing it before at Floor Polish, and now I'll be at a new place called Rhythm Industry Performance Center. I think that's the name of it.
Cool. So if
I
you're
went
in
I went and
Tucson,
toured it.
Arizona,
It's beautiful. They have like a Marley floor, so it's like a proper like floor to dance on. It should be really fun.
nice.
Yeah,
And
so
where can people
yeah.
get tickets for that?
If you go on Eventbrite
Okay.
and you look up Sacred Full Workshop, there's an Eventbrite and there's a donation there you can make. Any donation is great. No one's turned away. I would love to have you. So
Amazing. And
yeah.
I think I heard that you were part of A Tale of Two Houses, right?
Yes.
Is
So
that
that
on
was my
YouTube? I've heard that that's on YouTube.
yes. Very recently, I put it on YouTube. It is a documentary that I made about a year and a half ago about the Tucson underground music scene in the 80s. So between the years of 1984 to 86. And it's about young people and how they found each other in the pre internet world if they were young people that were a little bit outside of the mainstream, like, and so these two houses that were on the corner of Speedway and Euclid, they were sort of the epicenter of where all the weird kids hung out. And so
Wow.
there would always be bands playing there every weekend. Touring bands would play there. And it was also sitting right next door to the only late night restaurant in Tucson called Greasy Tony's. So you have like this, it was just this hub of like activity. So if you went to Greasy Tony's for, a sandwich after the bars closed, you would hear live music playing in the houses next door, and there were always parties happening. So that's where I grew up. I lived at one of the houses
Oh my gosh.
when I was like 18. So
Wow.
it yeah, so when I moved back to Tucson about 4 years ago, I saw that the houses were next to these giant buildings that were like student housing. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, those houses are going to be gone soon. And now they're gone.
Yeah, they moved
So I was,
them.
yeah, so they moved them, which is amazing. They didn't tear them down, which is a beautiful ending to the story. And I felt this like calling that I had to make a documentary about how important those houses were to kids in the underground music scene in the 80s, like myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to watch that. I'm so glad to hear it's on YouTube, and I
Yeah,
think
check
that
it out.
that premise is really, really important for young people now to be inspired by, as there's so much discourse about getting off of social media and kind of trying to remove ourselves from the internet age. People communicated and connected and did cool shit and got together before the
Yeah,
internet, and we can
my
do
God.
that again. We
Yes, no, we
can.
found each other, and
We
it was
found
like
each other.
yes, no, and that's truly what the movie is about, is how we all found each other, and I would love I love that sort of vision of the world too, is like if we could somehow go back there. But yeah, it's have a look, check it out. A Tale of Two Houses. It's about an hour and a half. It's a feature documentary. You might know somebody in it. It's lots of you know, Tucson
Some Tucson
old
old heads.
celebrities. So old. So maybe you won't, but yeah. Yeah,
Amazing.
it's a fun movie. There's a lot of animation in it, and there's cool illustrations, and it's fun. So
Awesome. Well, I will throw all of those links to your website, Instagram, YouTube in the
thank
show
you.
notes.
Thank you so
And
much.
gosh, I hate to end this conversation, but I think it's time for us to go now.
All good things must come to an end,
That's true. Thank you
I
so
guess.
much, Chris.
Yeah.
And I will.
Yeah, thank you. It was so much fun. It was great. I had a great time.
Wonderful. So please check out Chris Carlone's work everywhere that we've just described. You'll find all those links in the show notes. And until next time, happy shuffling.